Put it all in the bag now, or I swear to God, I'll start pulling this trigger until somebody stops breathing." The young man's voice cracked on the last word, and that crack told Jack Sullivan everything he needed to know. 53 people sat frozen at gunpoint in a desert diner at 2 in the morning, and the only man still breathing easy was the one those two robbers should have feared the most. He set his coffee down. He didn't reach for anything. He smiled, slow, tired, almost sad, because Jack had already seen what the little camera above the counter was about to show the entire world. Before we go any further, if you believe one quiet man in the right booth can change the fate of an entire room, subscribe and follow this story all the way to the end. And drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see exactly how far this story travels tonight. The bell over the diner door hadn't even finished ringing when the screaming started. "Hands, hands where I can see 'em. Everybody on the floor. Down." The young one came in first, and that was the first thing Jack Sullivan noticed. The young one always came in first. The desperate ones never had the patience to wait, never had the discipline to let the bigger man take the door. The kid swung a black handgun across the room in a wide jerking arc, and the gun moved too much. A professional kept the muzzle still. A professional pointed it at one target and let the room imagine the rest. This kid was pointing it at everything, which meant he was pointing it at nothing, which meant he was terrified. I said, "Down on the floor, down now." A waitress named Donna dropped a coffee pot and it shattered against the tile, and 3 people screamed at the sound like it was a second gunshot. A trucker near the window threw himself flat so fast he cracked his elbow on the bench and didn't even feel it. An old woman with a walker started crying without making any sound, just tears running down a face that had clearly cried a lot of quiet tears in its time. And in the corner booth, Jack Sullivan lifted his coffee cup, blew across the top of it once, and took a sip. The second man came in behind the kid, bigger, heavier through the shoulders. He carried a sawed-off shotgun low against his hip, and he carried it like a man who knew what it could do and hated that he knew. That one moved slower. That one had been here before, in some version of here, some other room, some other bad night. The kid was panic. The big one was guilt walking on 2 legs. Wallets, phones, jewelry in the bag as it comes around. You hold something back, I find out somebody bleeds for it. The big one's voice was steadier, but his eyes weren't. His eyes kept flicking to the door behind him, to the dark highway, to the place a car would come from if a car was coming. He didn't want witnesses. He wanted to be gone. A man who wants to be wanted is not a man who wants to kill. Jack saw all of it in under 4 seconds. He'd been reading men his whole life in prison yards, in bar parking lots, across negotiating tables where the wrong word got somebody buried in the desert. He read these 2 the way other people read a clock. And what the clock said was, these boys are already losing, and they don't know it yet. The kid's gun found the booth, found Jack. "You deaf old man," I said on the floor. Jack didn't move. He set the cup down on its saucer with a small, deliberate click. The leather vest he wore creaked as he settled back, and on the back of that vest, anyone in Arizona would have recognized the patch. The white background, the red letters, the name that made smart men cross the street and stupid men reach for their phones. He was 57 years old. His beard was trimmed close and gone gray. His hair was slicked, straight back, gray as gun smoke. His forearms were a ruin of old ink, faded blues and blacks, names and dates, and a few things he'd never explained to anyone living. "Son," Jack said, and his voice was so calm it cut through the screaming like a blade through smoke. "Your hands are shaking." The whole diner heard it. The whole diner went still in a different way now, not frozen with fear, but frozen with the sudden animal sense that the temperature in the room had just changed. The kid blinked. "What?" "Your hands," Jack nodded at the gun. "Look at them. You can't hold that thing as steady. You're not going to hit what you aim at. You might hit something you don't mean to." He let that sit for 1 second. "And then you've got a body, and a body changes everything for a man like you." Mini climax 1, the room tilts. "Shut up." The kid's voice climbed half an octave. "Shut your mouth or I'll Travis tell him to shut his mouth." And there it was. The first mistake. He'd used the big one's name. Jack filed it away without changing his expression. "Travis." He let his eyes drift to the bigger man. "Travis," he said gently, like he was greeting an old friend at a funeral. "That's a good name, my granddad's name. You don't want to be here either, do you, Travis?" Don't talk to him, the kid snapped. Talk to me, I'm the one with the gun. You're both the ones with the guns, Jack said. That's the problem, isn't it? Two boys, two guns, 53 people, and not one of you has a plan past the part where I hand you my wallet. The big one, Travis adjusted his grip on the shotgun. Sweat had broken across his forehead, even though the night outside was cool. We got a plan. No, Jack said softly. You've got a debt. There's a difference. The word landed like a slap. Travis's whole body flinched, just for a fraction of a second. But Jack saw it, and from that flinch, he pulled the next thread, the way he'd been pulling threads his entire life. What did you say? Travis's voice had dropped. I said you've got a debt. Jack folded his weathered hands on the table. I've known a lot of men who walk into a room the way you two just walked into this one. Boys who never robbed anybody in their lives suddenly waving guns at a diner full of grandparents at 2 a.m. You know what they've all got in common? He waited. Nobody answered. Somebody else sent them. Somebody they're more scared of than they are of prison. The kid's gun wavered. You don't know anything about us. I know you came in the wrong door, Jack said. I know there's no car running outside. I'd have heard it. So you walked here or you parked far enough back that you'll have to run for it after, which means you didn't think this through, which means somebody pushed you into it before you were ready. I know your buddy keeps looking at that highway like he's praying nobody comes because deep down he doesn't want to do this at all. Jack's gray eyes settled on the kid. And I know you've got a wedding band tan on a finger with no ring on it, which tells me you pawned something that mattered to you recently because somebody made you. The kid looked down at his own left hand, at the pale stripe where a ring used to be. His eyes filled. Ethan, Travis said at low a warning. Don't listen to him. He's playing you. So now Jack had both their names, Ethan and Travis. He almost felt sorry for them, almost. These two had walked into the one booth in the one diner in the entire state of Arizona where the man drinking coffee had spent 40 years learning to take other men apart with nothing but words and patience. I'm not playing anybody, Jack said. I'm the only person in this room telling you the truth. Everybody else is too scared. They're hoping you'll take the money and leave. I'm telling you that's not how this ends. You know how I know? He leaned forward an inch. Because I can see you don't have the money problem you think you have. You've got a different problem, and no amount of cash from this register is going to fix it. Behind the counter, the night manager, a thin man named Hector, with a wife and a newborn at home, had his hands raised so high his arms had started to shake, and his eyes were locked on Jack, like Jack was the last lighthouse on a black ocean. Open the register, Ethan barked at him, swinging the gun back toward the counter away from Jack. Open it now or I shoot the old man. You understand me. You hear me. I'll shoot him. And here is where it could have gone wrong. Here is where a younger Jack, a hotter Jack, the Jack of 30 years ago, would have moved, would have come up out of that booth and turned the kid's panic into a corpse's own or somebody else's. But Jack had buried too many friends and too many enemies to mistake speed for strength anymore. So instead, he said, Hector, open the register. Give the man what's in it. He said it like a father telling a frightened son it was okay. Go on. Money's just money. Nobody in this room is dying over the contents of that drawer tonight. Not them, not you. Hector punched the keys with trembling fingers. The drawer slid open with a ding. There, Jack said. See Ethan easy. Take it. Ethan stared at him. The gun was still up, but something had gone out of his arm. The fury was draining, and underneath it was something so much worse, exhaustion. The bottomless, grinding exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept right in months. Why are you using my name? Ethan whispered. Because you're a person, Jack said, not a robber. A person who's doing a robber's job tonight because he ran out of other doors to open. I've been there, son. I've been exactly there. I've done worse for less reason. He shrugged the heavy shoulders under that leather vest. The only difference between you and me is somebody once sat across from me the way I'm sitting across from you, and they told me the truth before it was too late to hear it. Travis edged closer to the counter, his eyes never leaving Jack. He scooped the cash from the drawer one-handed, stuffing it into a canvas bag, but he was doing it on autopilot like his body had decided to finish the job. His heart had already quit. We got it, Ethan. We got the money. Let's go. But Ethan didn't move toward the door. That was the thing that hung in the air. The thing that 53 people would later swear they all felt at the exact same second. Ethan had the money. The exit was right there, and his feet would not carry him out of that diner. "Ethan," Travis said again, sharper, "we're done. Move." "How much is in there?" Ethan said. Not to Travis, to the bag. "Few hundred," Travis said. "Maybe less." Ethan made a sound that wasn't a laugh and wasn't a sob, something in the broken country between the two. "A few $100s. He turned the gun over in his hand, looking at it like he didn't recognize it. "I pointed a gun at 50 people for a few $100s. You know what a few $100s does to what I owe?" His voice was rising again, but it wasn't aimed at the room anymore. It was aimed at the ceiling, at God, at whoever was supposed to be keeping score. "It does nothing. It's nothing. It doesn't even cover this week's interest." The whole diner heard of the word, interest. Jack closed his eyes for just a moment, the way a doctor does when the x-ray confirms what he already feared. When he opened them, his voice was so quiet that people 3 booths away leaned in to hear it. "How much do you owe Ethan?" "Don't," Travis said. "Don't answer him." "How much?" And Ethan Hayes, 26 years old, blonde gun shaking in a hand that had once held something gentle, looked at the old biker in the corner booth and said the number that had been eating him alive for 8 months. $60,000. A trucker on the floor sucked in a breath. The old woman with the walker stopped crying. "That was the number this morning," Ethan went on. "And now the words came faster because once the dam breaks, it all has to come out. It was 16,000 when I borrowed it. 16 8 months ago. And every week he adds more, and every week I pay what I can, and every week the number goes up. I've given that man every dollar I've earned for 8 months, and the number goes up. How does that happen? How does 16 become 60 when you never stop paying?" "It's not a loan," Jack said. "It's a leash. It's built to never get shorter. That's the whole design." "He said it was a loan." Ethan's eyes were wet and wild. "My daughter, she—" His voice broke completely. He had to stop. He had to physically force the next words out of his chest. "My daughter is 3 years old. Her name is Lily, and 8 months ago her heart stopped on my kitchen floor." The diner did not make a sound. Even Travis had gone still. The bag of money hanging forgotten from his fist, his sawed-off shotgun drifting down toward the floor as if it had gotten too heavy to hold. "Congenital defect," Ethan said, and the medical words sounded so strange and small in his mouth. "That's what they call it, Dad. Something wrong with her heart she was born with, and we never knew until one morning she was eating cereal and then she just went down. And I did CPR on my own kid on my own kitchen floor while my wife screamed into the phone and the ambulance came and they got her back. And then a doctor in a clean white coat told me my baby needed surgeries or she would die before she turned 4. He swallowed. And then a woman with a clipboard told me what it cost. Jack didn't say a word. He just listened. He had learned long ago that there was a kind of listening that was its own form of mercy. We didn't have insurance that covered it. We didn't have anything. I drove a delivery route. Jess waited tables. We had $400 in savings and a baby with a broken heart. Ethan's gun hand had dropped completely now, the weapon pointing at the floor, his whole body folding inward. And a man came to me, through a guy I knew, said he could help, said he understood that the system fails good people, and he was just an honest businessman who filled the gaps the banks left behind. He gave me $16,000 in cash in a parking lot, and he shook my hand and he said, Ethan's face twisted. He said, "I'm doing you a kindness, Ethan. Don't ever forget I was kind to you." "What's his name?" Jack said. Travis's head snapped up. "Don't. What's his name, Ethan?" Ethan looked at Travis. Travis looked back, and for the first time, the big man's hard face cracked all the way open, and what was underneath wasn't a criminal. It was a man who was just as trapped, just as scared, just as far past the edge of any cliff he'd ever imagined standing on. "He'll kill us," Travis said. It came out almost as a whisper. "You don't understand, old man. You think you do. You don't. We say his name out loud and we're dead us our families, everybody. He owns people. He owns cops. You think the law's gonna save us from him? The law works for him." And that, more than the guns, more than the screaming, more than the number 60,000 was the thing that made Jack Sullivan finally understand what kind of night this was going to be. Because Jack had spent his whole life on the other side of the law, And even he knew that when a man tells you the cops belong to the loan shark, he is usually telling you the truth. The worst men he'd ever known weren't the ones in vests like his. They were the ones in suits and badges who had figured out how to be evil legally. Travis? Jack's voice was different now, lower. The performance was gone, the patience was gone, and what was left was something the whole diner could feel, something old and hard and absolutely without fear. Look at me. Not the door, not the highway, Miklam. He waited until the big man's eyes came to his. I have spent 40 years making men like the one you're scared of wish they'd never been born. You hear me? I'm not a man who's afraid of the dark. I am the dark sun. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and this time you're going to answer because I'm the only chance you've got left of seeing your families again. What is his name? The silence stretched for 1 second, 2, 3, and then Travis Cole, 300 miles past the end of his rope, said the name that would in 72 hours be on every screen in America. Nolan Price. The instant the words left his mouth, Travis seemed to shrink, like saying it had cost him something he could never get back. He looked at the door again, fast, as if Nolan Price himself might already be standing in it. But Jack Sullivan had gone very, very calm. The kind of calm that comes over a man not when the danger passes, but when the danger finally has a face. Nolan Price, Jack repeated, tasting it, operates out of where Phoenix, Tucson. Everywhere, Ethan said hollowly. He's got a pawn shop. That's the front, but it's bigger, way bigger. There's other guys like us, lots of us. He calls us his accounts. He laughed that broken laugh again. We're not people to him. We're line items. And tonight, Jack said slowly, the pieces turning in his mind like the tumblers of a lock. Tonight he sent 2 of his accounts to rob a highway diner, 2 men who have never done this before. Why, a man like that's got real muscle. Why send a delivery driver and his terrified buddy to knock over a diner for a few $100? Ethan and Travis looked at each other. It's a test, Travis said quietly. He does it to the ones who fall too far behind. Makes you do a job. Says if you pull it off, he knocks something off what you owe. Says it proves you're committed. His jaw worked. But guys who do the jobs, they end up doing more jobs. Worse ones. And the debt never goes down. Not really. It's just a leash, Jack finished. Like I said, he's not robbing this diner. He's collaring you tighter. A man near the front, heavy-set, red-faced, had clearly had enough. He half rose from the floor. So call the cops, he hissed at the room. What are we doing? They put their guns down. Somebody call the... Sit down, Jack said without even looking at him. The man sat down. You're not listening, Jack said to the room, now raising his voice for the first time, letting it fill the whole diner. These boys just told you the cops are bought. You call 911 right now and maybe you get a deputy who's straight. Or maybe you get one of Nolan Price's deputies and he shows up and these 2 have a very bad accident in the back of a patrol car and Lily Hayes grows up without a daddy and everything they just confessed in front of all of you dies with them. He let that land. Is that what you want? To watch 2 desperate men get erased to protect the man who put the guns in their hands? Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then everybody keep your phones in your pockets, Jack said, and let me work, he turned back to Ethan. And here in the corner booth of a diner 40 miles from anywhere, Jack Sullivan made the decision that the security camera above the counter was recording in perfect silent, on undeniable detail, the decision that 50 million people would eventually watch, leaning toward their screens, holding their breath. Ethan, Travis, I'm going to ask you to do something that's going to feel impossible. Jack's voice was steady as bedrock. I want you to put the guns down, on the floor. Slow, and I want you to come sit at this booth with me. You're insane, Ethan breathed. We put them down, somebody jumps us, and then it's prison or worse. Nobody in this room is jumping anybody. Jack swept his gaze across the floor, and somehow, by some authority that needed no badge and no gun, the 53 terrified strangers understood that he was speaking for them now, and that they had better not make a liar of him. These people are going to sit right where they are, and you 2 are going to sit with me, because what you've got, what's in your phone, Ethan, the things you've seen, the things you know about Nolan Price, that's not a robbery. That's a key, and I know a man who knows exactly which door it opens. What man? Travis said. His name is Carl Whitman, Jack said. He's an attorney, the kind that doesn't lose, the kind that's been waiting 20 years for somebody to hand him a thread he can pull on men like Nolan Price. Jack tapped the table. But it only works if you put the guns down. A robbery is a crime, son. A confession is evidence. You walk out that door with that bag, you're a fugitive for the rest of your short life. You sit down at this table and tell the truth into that camera up there. He nodded almost imperceptibly toward the counter, and Ethan's eyes followed, and Ethan saw the little black lens for the first time and went white. And you might just be the men who bring the whole thing down. Ethan stared at the camera. It's recording, he whispered. It's been recording this whole... Every second, Jack said gently. Every word you've said. Which means right now, this minute, you've got a choice that most men in your position never get. You can keep being Nolan Price's line item. He paused. Or you can be the man your daughter reads about someday and feels proud. Ethan Hayes began to cry. Not the silent tears of the old woman with the walker. Real crying, the ugly heaving kind that a man only does when something inside him that's been clenched for 8 straight months finally lets go. The gun hung from his fingers, pointed at nothing, forgotten. She's getting better, he choked out. Lily, the surgery, it worked. She's alive. She's gonna be okay. That's the thing nobody understands. I'm not even mad. I borrowed the money. I'd do it again. I'd rob 100 diners to keep her heart beating. But Jess is scared all the time now. Price's guys came to the house. They sat in a car outside my daughter's window for 3 nights just to let me know they could. And I haven't slept. I haven't slept since. His voice fell to almost nothing. I just want it to stop. I just want my family to be safe. I don't care what happens to me. I just want it to stop. Jack reached across the table slowly so the kid could see his hands the whole way, and he laid one big scarred palm flat on the tabletop, an open hand, an offering. Then make it stop, Jack said. Right here, right now. Put it down, son. The whole world seemed to hold still, and then Ethan Hayes crouched and set the black handgun on the diner floor and slid it across the tile toward the booth, where it spun once and came to rest against Jack's boot. A collective gasp went through the diner like wind through wheat. Travis, Jack said. But Travis Cole hadn't moved. The sawed-off shotgun was still in his hands, still pointed at the floor, but his knuckles had gone white around it, and his eyes were jumping between the door and Jack and the camera. And the door again. I can't, Travis said. You don't get it. He sent us together for a reason. We're supposed to watch each other. If Ethan turns and I don't, he shook his head violently. I got a mother in a home, old man, in his county. You think she's safe if I do this? You think there's anywhere far enough? There is, Jack said. Mama, when Carl Whitman is done, there won't be a Nolan Price to be scared of. There won't be a county that belongs to him. That's the difference between running and ending it. You've been running for how long? Has it kept your mother safe? Has it kept anybody safe? He held the big man's gaze. Running just means you die tired, Travis. I've watched a lot of men die tired. I'm offering you the other thing. What other thing? Travis whispered. Finishing it, Jack said. Being the man who finally finished it. For a long, agonizing moment, Travis Cole stood frozen in the middle of the diner, the last gun in the room trembling in his grip. 53 souls watching one small camera recording the whole rest of his life balanced on a knife's edge. And then from somewhere deep in the diner, a sound broke the silence that none of them expected. It was the old woman with the walker. She had stopped crying, and in a thin, clear, steady voice she said, Son, my husband ran from something his whole life. He died running. You don't have to. Travis Cole looked at her. His chest heaved once, twice, and then the big man's shoulders dropped and the fight went out of him all at once, like a wave finally pulling back from the shore. And he knelt down on the diner floor and laid the sawed-off shotgun on the tile with a care that was almost tender, the way you set something down when you never want to pick it up again. Okay, Travis Cole said, and his voice cracked exactly the way Ethan's had at the start of the night. 2 desperate men bookending their own surrender. Okay, I'm done running. Jack Sullivan let out a breath he'd been holding for what felt like 40 years. Hector, he called toward the counter without raising his voice. Lock that front door. Flip the sign. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out, not yet. And son, that camera over the counter, don't you touch it. Don't you turn it off. That little black box is about to do more good than every gun ever made. He looked at the two young men standing in the wreckage of the worst decision of their lives. Sit down, both of you. You came in here tonight to take a few $100s. He gestured to the empty side of the booth, and they came and they sat, two grown men folding down across from a stranger like sons coming home. You're gonna leave, Jack said quietly, having taken down an empire. And above the counter, in perfect silence, the little camera kept recording every word, every name, every confession, capturing the moment a robbery stopped being a robbery. And the long, slow fall of Nolan Price began one truth at a time, in a diner 40 miles from anywhere on the night the whole world finally started watching. The two of them sat across from Jack like men who'd forgotten how chairs worked, perched on the edge of the booth, ready to bolt, ready to run their bodies, still wired for a fight that was already over. Phone's on the table, Jack said. Both of yours, face up. Ethan obeyed first. Travis hesitated, then set his down beside it, a cheap, cracked thing held together with tape. Now, Jack tapped the table once. Ethan, you said you have got pictures. You said you know things. I need you to tell me, slow and clear, what exactly is on that phone. Ethan looked at the device like it was a live grenade. If he knows I took those, he's not gonna know, Jack said. Not until it's too late for him to do anything about it. That's the whole point. Talk to me. Ethan wet his cracked lips. 3 weeks ago, Price had me drive a package to his shop, the back office. He never lets accounts in the back, but his guy was out sick, and he needed somebody he could lean on, somebody too scared to ever say a word. His hands started to tremble again, but differently now, not fear, something closer to disbelief at his own nerve. And he had this book open on the desk, a ledger, big leather thing like something out of an old movie, names down one side, numbers down the other, pages and pages of it. And you photographed it, Jack said. He stepped out to take a call, yelling at somebody on the phone. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know what made me do it. 8 months of hating that man, I guess. I pulled out my phone and I flipped through and I took pictures of everything, every page I could reach. My hands were shaking so bad, half of them probably came out blurry. I figured I'd delete them. I figured it was stupid, but I never did. I couldn't. How many pages? 40, maybe more. Ethan's eyes came up. And it's not just loans, Jack. There's names in there I recognized, from the news, from the county building. His voice dropped to almost nothing. There's a column that just says monthly, names with a payment that goes out every month like clockwork. Not money coming in, money going out. Travis turned his head slowly to stare at his friend. You never told me that part. I never told anybody that part, Ethan said. I was too scared to even look at it twice. Jack went still, the kind of still that the whole diner had learned in the last hour to be afraid of in a good way. Money going out, he repeated, every month, to the same names, same amounts. He leaned back. Son, that's not a loan book. That's a payroll. A man like Nolan Price doesn't pay people money. He takes it. So if he's paying somebody every single month, that's not generosity. That's the cost of being left alone. That's what he pays to keep certain doors shut and certain badges looking the other way. Cops, Travis breathed. Maybe cops, Jack said. Maybe more than cops. You said there were names from the county building. He thought for a moment and his jaw tightened. Anybody on that list with the last name Stills, both men froze. Ethan's mouth fell open. How do you know that name? The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees. Because Raymond Stills III, Jack said slowly, is the man who sits on the county oversight board. The board that decides which businesses get inspected and which ones don't, which complaints get investigated and which ones disappear. I know that name because 3 years ago, a brother of mine, a good man, a man who'd gone straight, ran a legitimate shop, got squeezed out of business by 100 little violations that appeared out of nowhere the same week he refused to pay a consulting fee. Jack's scarred hands had curled into fists on the tabletop. I always wondered who was holding the leash on that. Now I think I know. The diner had gone dead silent again. 53 strangers who an hour ago had been praying only to survive the night now found themselves leaning in because they understood every one of them. Understood that they were no longer witnesses to a robbery. They were witnesses to something much bigger cracking open right in front of them. This isn't a street thing, Jack said more to himself than anyone. Nolan Price isn't a loan shark. He's the bottom layer of something with a politician sitting on top of it. The loans are just the engine. The fear is just the fuel. The real machine is... He stopped. He looked up at the camera above the counter and then back at Ethan. We can't do this alone. And we can't do it tonight, not the whole thing. But we can do the one thing that matters most before anybody else gets a vote. He pulled out his own phone. We can make sure that what's in your phone exists in 3 other places before sunrise. Because the second Nolan Price suspects that ledger's been seen, he burns it, and he burns everyone who saw it. He dialed. It rang twice. Carl, Jack said. It's Sullivan. A pause. Yeah, I know what time it is. Shut up and listen. Another pause longer. The whole diner watched the old biker's face. I'm at the Crossroads Diner out on the 191. There's 2 boys here who just tried to rob the place. He let that sit. And in the last hour, they've handed me the name Nolan Price, the name Raymond Stills, the 3rd and 40 photographs of a ledger that ties them together with monthly payments to people I'm betting wear badges and suits. A very long pause now. Jack's mouth curved just slightly. Yeah, I thought that might wake you up. He listened. He nodded. He listened more. He's coming, Jack told the table when he hung up. He's 2 hours out. He says, don't touch the phones. Don't delete anything. Don't post anything online. Don't call the police. And for God's sake, don't let those 2 boys out of your sight. He almost smiled. He also said, and I'm quoting him, if this is real, Jack, this is the case of my entire life. Ethan let out a shaky breath. What do we do for 2 hours? We back up everything, Jack said. Right now. What happened over the next several minutes, the camera above the counter caught in full. Ethan, hands steadier now that he had something to do besides be afraid, unlocked his phone and pulled up the photographs. And even Jack, who had seen a great many terrible things in his life, went quiet at the sight of those pages. Column after column of human beings reduced to debts. Beside the booth, the old woman with the walker had wheeled herself closer uninvited and was peering at the screen, and suddenly her breath caught. That one, she whispered, pointing a trembling finger. Margaret Ellison. That's my neighbor. She lost her house last spring. She told everyone it was the bank. Her old eyes lifted, wet and furious. She didn't lose it to any bank, did she? No, ma'am, Ethan said softly. I don't think she did. And something happened in the diner then that none of them would ever forget. One by one, people who had been hostages an hour ago began to come closer, not to run, not to escape, but to look, to see the names, and a heavy-set trucker recognized one, and a young waitress recognized another. The ledger wasn't a list of strangers. It was a list of them, their town, their neighbors, the quiet, ruined people whose bad luck had never quite added up. My God, the trucker said hoarsely. He's been bleeding this whole county dry, and we just thought folks had bad luck. That's how it works, Jack said. One drowning man looks like an accident. 1,000 drowning men in the same river, that's a crime. But nobody ever sees the river until somebody puts all the names in one place. He looked at Ethan, which is exactly what's in your hand. Jack had Ethan send the photographs to 3 numbers, Carl Whitman's then a 2nd number. Jack made him memorize and not save, and then to a cloud account Jack set up on the spot under a name that wasn't his. 3 copies, 3 places, and out of Nolan Price's reach forever. And the moment the 3rd upload finished, Ethan's phone buzzed in his hand. The whole booth went rigid, the screen lit up with a name, and the name was Price. He knows, Travis said instantly, lurching half out of the booth. He knows, oh God, he knows. Sit down, Jack said. He doesn't know anything. Think. You 2 were supposed to rob this place. It's been over an hour. He's calling because the job's running long and he wants his money. That's all. He looked at Ethan. Don't answer it. Let it ring. A man who's been caught answers too fast. A man who's just nervous lets it go. Be nervous. The phone rang and went quiet. Then it started again. Price. He won't stop, Ethan whispered. When he gets like this, he doesn't stop. Then we changed the math, Jack said. He thought for a half second. Answer it. Speaker, you say the job got complicated. There were more people than you expected. You're laying low till the road's clear and you'll bring the money at dawn. You say it scared and you say it short. You do not let him hear hope in your voice and you do not let him hear a plan. Can you do that? Ethan's hand was shaking around the phone. I don't. You did CPR on your own daughter on your kitchen floor, Jack said quietly. You can do 30 seconds on the phone. Do it for her. Ethan closed his eyes. He breathed. And then he answered, and the whole diner held its breath as a voice came through the little speaker, smooth, unhurried, almost warm, and somehow more frightening than any shout could ever be. Ethan, you've kept me waiting. There were more people than we thought, Ethan said, and the fear in his voice needed no acting at all. We had to wait. The road's got traffic. We're laying low till it clears. A pause on the line. A long one. You sound tired, Ethan. The voice was almost gentle. Is the job done? It's done. Ethan lied. We got it. We'll bring it at dawn, I swear. Another pause. And then Nolan Price said something that turned the blood in the booth to ice water. That's funny, Price said softly, because I'm looking at a man right now who tells me there's police scanner chatter about the Crossroads Diner. And here you are telling me everything's fine. The warmth drained out of his voice all at once, like a mask sliding off. Now, which one of you is lying to me, Ethan? Because I do not abide being lied to. You know that better than most. The call went dead. For a moment, nobody in the diner moved or breathed. Then Travis made a low sound of pure animal panic. Scanner chatter, somebody calling it in, somebody in here, called the cops. Every head in the diner turned. And there in the back, the heavy-set, red-faced man who tried to argue earlier had gone pale as paper, and his hand was halfway into his jacket pocket, where the corner of a phone was just visible. I just texted my brother-in-law, the man stammered. He's a deputy. I thought he could help. I didn't. Your brother-in-law, Jack said very slowly, rising from the booth for the first time all night, is on Nolan Price's payroll. You just told the wolf exactly where the sheep are sleeping. The man's face crumpled. I didn't know. Oh, God, I didn't know. Nobody did, Jack said, and to the man's surprise, there was no anger in it, only a terrible calm. That's how he wins. He makes good people into his eyes and ears without them ever knowing they've been bought. Sit down. The damage is done. Now we work faster. He turned to the room and his voice rose to fill every corner of it. Listen to me, all of you. Nolan Price now knows something's wrong at this diner. He's going to send people. Could be his own men. Could be a deputy with a badge that means nothing. We do not have 2 hours anymore. We have however long it takes a car to get here from Price's shop, and I'd guess that's 40 minutes if we're lucky. A woman near the window started to cry. We're going to die in here. No. Jack said it like a hammer coming down. No, you are not, because here's what they don't understand yet. He held up Ethan's phone. The thing they're coming to protect is already gone. It's in 3 places they'll never find. They can burn this diner to the ground tonight, and the ledger still surfaces tomorrow. The only thing left for them to do is silence the witnesses, which means every single one of you is now safest if the whole world knows your faces and your names before anyone gets here. Ethan stared at him. You said don't post anything online, Carl said. Carl said that an hour ago when we had time and secrecy on our side, Jack had said. We don't have either anymore. The rules just changed. He looked up at the little camera above the counter, and a slow, grim understanding spread across his face. That footage isn't just evidence now. It's a shield. A man can make 2 robbers disappear in the desert. He can make a diner full of nobodies disappear if he's desperate enough. But he cannot make 50 million people unsee something. Jack turned to Hector. That camera, is it networked? Does it save to a computer, the cloud anywhere off-site? Hector shook his head frantically. Just the hard drive in the back office. It records local. Then we make a copy and we get it out, Jack said. Tonight, now, before anyone gets here to take that drive and feed it to a fire. But it was Travis. Quiet, broken Travis, who had said barely 10 words since he set down the shotgun, who spoke up now, and what he said stopped the whole room cold. He's going to check the cameras. Jack looked at him. What? Price. Travis's voice was hollow. When he sends somebody, first thing they do every time is they take the cameras. The footage. It's the first thing. I've seen it. He had a guy named Doyle who did nothing but clean up after jobs. Cameras first, witnesses second. Travis's eyes were huge. If we copy that drive and they catch us with it, they'll know we know. And then it's not cleanup anymore. It's a massacre. He'll decide it's cheaper to end everyone in here than risk that footage walking out the door. The diner held its breath, and Jack Sullivan, 57 years old, who had buried more friends than most men ever made, looked around at the frightened faces at Hector and his newborn at home, at the old woman whose husband died running at the trucker, at the waitress, at the man who'd betrayed them all by accident and was now weeping into his hands. And he understood that the next decision was going to be his alone, and that it would either save every soul in that room or get them killed. Then we don't hide it, Jack said finally. We do the opposite. We make so much noise that hurting us becomes the most expensive thing Nolan Price has ever done in his life. He picked up Ethan's phone and he opened the camera and he pointed it at his own weathered face. Everyone gather behind me, he said. Tight, I want every one of you in frame. I want your faces seen. He looked at the lens. We're going live. Live where? The waitress asked. Everywhere, Jack said. Every account, every app. Anybody's got followers. Anybody's got family watching. We tell the truth, all of it, the names, the ledger, the diner, Nolan Price, Raymond Stills III, and we tell the whole world that if anything happens to a single person in this building tonight, it happened after we said these men's names out loud on camera. He looked around the room. A coward like Price can make problems disappear in the dark. So we take away the dark. Right now. For one long moment, nobody moved. And then the old woman with the walker straightened her thin shoulders, wheeled herself directly into frame beside Jack, looked into the little glass eye of the phone, and said in a voice that did not shake at all, My name is Eleanor Briggs. I'm 79 years old, and I am not afraid anymore. One by one they came. The trucker, the waitress, Hector, Ethan and Travis, the two men who'd started the night as the most frightened people in the building, standing now shoulder to shoulder with the strangers they'd terrorized, all of them packed tight into the frame of a cracked cell phone, all of them looking into the lens. Jack Sullivan stood at the center of them, the red letters on his vest catching the light, and he reached out one scarred finger toward the screen. My name is Jack Sullivan, he said quietly, and in about 30 seconds the whole world is going to meet the man who thought he owned this county. His finger came down on the screen, and somewhere out on the dark highway, headlights had just appeared, growing larger, coming fast toward the diner, and the little red dot in the corner of the screen began to blink, and the number beside it, the number that counted how many people in the world were watching, ticked over from 0 to 1 and then to 9, and then began to climb. The headlights swept across the windows and died, and a car door slammed somewhere out in the dark, and the number in the corner of the screen kept climbing. 30 viewers now, then 50, then 110. Keep talking, Jack said low without turning from the lens. Everybody stay in frame. Whoever just got out of that car is about to walk into the most watched room in the state of Arizona, and they don't know it yet. The front door opened. The man who came through it was not what anyone expected. No mask, no gun in his hand. He wore a clean collared shirt and pressed slacks and a thin smile, and he stopped just inside the doorway and looked across the diner with the mild, unbothered expression of a man checking on a rental property. Evening, folks, he said pleasantly. Sorry to bother you all so late. That's Doyle, Travis whispered, and his whole body had gone rigid. That's his cleanup guy. That's Doyle. Doyle's eyes moved across the room the way a man counts cattle, and they settled on the cluster of people gathered behind Jack and on the phone held up in front of them, and the thin smile didn't move, but something behind his eyes did. What's all this now? Doyle said. Little late for home movies. We're live, Jack said. He didn't lower the phone. 200 people watching right now. 200 and growing. Every word, your face included, going out to the world in real time. He let that land. So whatever Nolan Price told you to do here tonight, Doyle, you might want to think real hard about doing it on camera. Doyle's smile finally slipped, just at the corners. You don't know what you're talking about, old man. I know your name, Jack said. Just said it out loud to 200 strangers. So did the boy beside me. By morning, it'll be 1,000. By tomorrow night, it'll be 1,000,000, and every one of them will know that a man named Doyle walked into the Crossroads Diner at 3 in the morning, right after Nolan Price found out his ledger walked out the door. Jack tilted his head. How's that going to feel, being the famous one, being the face, because Price isn't going to take the fall for this? Men like him never do. They've always got a Doyle to hand the world instead. Something flickered across Doyle's face, and it wasn't fear of Jack. It was a colder, more private fear. The fear of a man who just realized all at once that he was standing in the exact spot the boss would want a body to be found. He sent you to clean up, Jack went on quiet and relentless. But you can't clean up 200 witnesses with phones. You can't clean up a live broadcast. So either you walk back out that door right now and tell Nolan Price you got here too late and it was already everywhere, or you stay and you become the only name attached to whatever happens next. Your choice. But the camera's going to remember which one you make. The diner was so quiet you could hear the coffee machine drip. Doyle's jaw worked. His eyes flicked to the phone, to the red dot, to the climbing number 340 now and then, to the faces behind it all, those ordinary people staring back at him. Witnesses he could not undo. And then Doyle did something that made Travis gasp out loud. He took a step back toward the door. "This isn't over," Doyle said, but the threat had no teeth in it now. "You people have no idea what you just started." "Oh, we know exactly what we started," Jack said. "Tell Nolan we said hello. Tell him the whole world's coming." Doyle backed out the door. A car door slammed. An engine roared and tires spat gravel, and then the headlights were swinging away, shrinking down the dark highway, gone. The diner exploded not in screams this time, but in a ragged, disbelieving cheer, a sound of 53 people who had been certain they were going to and had instead just watched one old man in a leather vest stare down the devil's own cleanup crew and send him running. But Jack didn't celebrate. He kept the phone steady, and his face had gone graver, not lighter. "Don't," he said quietly, and the cheering died. "Don't celebrate yet. That man just drove off to make a phone call, and the man he's calling is now backed into a corner, and a cornered man with everything to lose is the most dangerous thing on earth. We're not safe. We just bought ourselves a little time and a lot of witnesses. That's all." The viewer count hit 500. Then all at once it jumped 1,000, 2,000, and Jack understood that somewhere out there someone with a big following had shared it, and the dam had broken, and the river was running now, whether anyone wanted it to or not. Ethan's phone buzzed against the table. Not Price this time. A number Jack recognized. "Carl," Jack said, snatching it up, putting it to his ear. "Talk to me." Carl Whitman's voice came through fast and sharp. The voice of a man who'd been driving 90 miles an hour while watching a live stream on the dash. "Jack, what in God's name are you doing? I'm watching it. I'm watching it right now. You're on every feed. Somebody clipped it. It's everywhere. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I had to change the play," Jack said. "Price made us. He had a source. We didn't have 2 hours anymore. So I took away the one thing he needs, the dark." A long pause. Then Carl Whitman laughed a stunned, breathless laugh. "You took away the dark," he repeated. "Jack, you magnificent lunatic. Do you understand what you've done? You can't make this disappear now. Nobody can make this disappear now. It's the best protected evidence in America. It's been seen by God. The number's still climbing." His voice turned urgent. "Listen to me. Listen carefully. Do not let anyone touch that security drive. Do not let anyone leave with it. And do not let those two boys talk anymore on the live feed. Not another word. I know. Everything they say now, the prosecution hears too. You understand me. They've confessed enough to put a noose around Nolan Price. They don't need to put one around their own necks." Jack glanced at Ethan and Travis. "Understood. I'll cut them off." "I'm 40 minutes out," Carl said. "I've already called somebody clean, somebody Price can't touch because she doesn't work in his county and she doesn't work for his state." A beat. "I called the FBI field office, Jack, the corruption unit. The ledger photos you sent, I forwarded them an hour ago, the second I saw them. They've been awake ever since." The phone nearly slipped from Jack's hand. "You called the federal government," Jack said slowly, "an hour ago, before any of this went live." "I called them the second you read me those names," Carl said. "Raymond Stills III has been on a watch list for 2 years. They've never been able to touch him because every road to him ran through people he owned. And then you call me at 1 a.m. and tell me you're sitting on a ledger with his name in it and monthly payments going out to badges." Carl's voice cracked with something close to awe. "Jack, they've been waiting for this for years. You didn't stumble into a robbery tonight. You stumbled into the keystone, pull it, and the whole arch comes down." Jack lowered the phone slowly. He looked at the two young men across the booth, at Ethan, who'd robbed a diner for his daughter's heart, and at Travis, who'd run his whole life, and finally stopped, and he understood that these two desperate, broken men had been carrying around the single thing a federal task force had been chasing for 2 years, and they hadn't even known what it was worth. "Boys," Jack said softly, "I need you to stop talking on the camera now. Not because you did anything wrong, because you have already done the bravest thing either of you will ever do, and now I need you to let it work. From here on, you say nothing about the robbery, nothing about Price, nothing. You let the footage and the ledger do the talking. Can you do that?" Ethan nodded, Travis nodded. And then Travis said very quietly the thing that had been eating him since the second Doyle walked out the door. "My mother." Jack looked at him. "Price knows everything's gone sideways," Travis said, his voice shaking. "He knows it's me and Ethan. And the first thing a man like that does when he can't reach you, he reaches for the people you love. My mom's in a home in his county. She doesn't even know who he is. She doesn't know any of this. And right now, she is the easiest way in the world for him to hurt me." His eyes filled. "If he sends somebody to that home tonight, there's nobody to stop them. There's a night nurse and a locked door. That's it." The diner went quiet again. Jack didn't hesitate. He lifted Ethan's phone, the one still streaming live, and he turned it so it caught his face full on, and he spoke directly to the 2,000 strangers watching and to the thousands more arriving every minute. "I need help," Jack said. "From anyone watching this who's anywhere near Maricopa County right now. There's a woman in a care home, an innocent woman, a mother who has nothing to do with any of this, and the man we've been telling you about may try to hurt her tonight to get to her son. I'm asking anybody close, anybody good, get to her. Be seen, be witnesses. Make that home the second most watched place in Arizona right after this one. Because evil works in the dark, and we are going to put a light on every single place it tries to hide." Travis stared at him open-mouthed. "You can't, they won't." "Watch," Jack said, and the camera kept climbing 3,000, 4,000, and in the comments scrolling up the side of the screen faster than anyone could read them, strangers from across the state were already typing the name of the town. We're already saying, I'm 20 minutes from there. We're already saying, my daughter's a nurse. I'm calling her. We're already saying, on my way. Travis Cole put his face in his hands and wept because in 26 years of being treated like a problem to be managed, no one had ever once stood up for something he loved. "White Bite," he choked out. "Why are you doing this for us? We came in here to rob you. We pointed guns at that old woman, at all these people. We're not good men." Jack set the phone down for a moment, carefully keeping it pointed at the ceiling, and he reached across the booth and took Travis Cole by the back of the neck, the way a father takes a son firm and warm. "Son," Jack said, "I have done things in my life that would make what you did tonight look like a parking ticket. I have hurt people. I have buried people. I spent 11 years in a federal prison for the kind of man I used to be." He held Travis's eyes. "And one day a long time ago, somebody decided I was worth saving anyway before I'd earned it, before I deserved it, when I was still pointing my own gun at the world. That's the only reason I'm sitting here instead of rotting in the ground." His grip tightened. "Good men aren't born, Travis. They're built usually out of the wreckage of bad ones. You put your gun down tonight when you didn't have to. That's the first brick. The rest is just laying one on top of the other for the rest of your life." The whole diner had gone silent listening to him, and so had the comments. Somehow the scroll slowing as 4,000 strangers leaned toward their own screens, hearing an old outlaw say the truest thing any of them had heard in a long time. And then the moment shattered. Ethan's phone rang again. "Price." Nobody moved. "He knows it's live," Ethan whispered. "He has to know by now. Everyone knows." "Answer it," Jack said. "Speaker, but this time I talk," Ethan answered. He set the phone on the table between them, and Jack leaned over it, and into the silence he said one word. "Nolan." There was a pause on the line. When Nolan Price spoke, the smooth warmth was gone entirely. What was left was flat and cold and very, very quiet. The voice of a man who had never once in his adult life failed to get his way, hearing the first crack in the wall. "Who is this?" "My name's Jack Sullivan. You don't know me, but about 4,000 people are listening to this phone call right now, Nolan, and that number's going up by the second, so I'd choose your next words like they're being read aloud at your trial. Because they are." Silence. Then Sullivan, a slow exhale. "The biker. I've heard the name. The cold voice turned almost curious. You've made a serious mistake tonight, Mr. Sullivan. You've put a lot of innocent people in a very dangerous position. People who were perfectly safe until you decided to play hero. No, Jack said. They were never safe. They were just in your county, which you mistook for the same thing. The difference is, tonight they found out. And so did everyone watching. He leaned closer to the phone. Here's what's already true, Nolan, and nothing you do in the next hour can change it. The ledger's out, 40 pages, every name, every monthly payment. It's in 3 places you'll never reach. The FBI's had it for over an hour. Carl Whitman's on his way here right now. And every word you've said on this phone has gone out live to a crowd that won't stop growing. Jack paused. You spent your whole life making sure nobody could ever see what you do in the dark. And tonight in one room in 1 hour, 2 boys you treated like line items turned every light in the country on. It's over. You just don't feel it yet. The line was quiet for a long, long moment. And then Nolan Price laughed soft, almost gentle, and said the thing that made every hair on Jack Sullivan's arm stand up. You think the ledger is the danger to you, Price said quietly. That's sweet. You think this is about a book. A pause. Mr. Sullivan, do you know how many of the people sitting in that diner with you right now owe me money? Do you know how many of them I already own? You're standing in a room full of my accounts, and you don't even know which ones. The smile was audible. You haven't gathered witnesses, old man. Some of those frightened faces behind you, they belong to me. And one of them has been telling me everything since the moment I called the first time. The line went dead. The phone sat silent on the table, and slowly, terribly, every person in the diner turned to look at every other person. The cheer from earlier was gone. The unity that had felt so solid a minute ago cracked straight down the middle. Because Price had done the cruelest thing left to him, he couldn't reach them with a gun anymore, so he'd reach them with doubt. He'd turned 53 people who'd just become brave back into 53 people who were afraid of each other. He's lying, the waitress said, but her voice wobbled. He's just trying to... Maybe, Jack said. Maybe he's lying. His eyes moved slowly across the room, reading faces the way he'd read Ethan and Travis at the start of the night. But maybe he's not, and he knows that the doubt does his work for him either way. He stood up to his full height. So here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to turn on each other. We're not going to start pointing fingers and tearing this room apart looking for a traitor while the clock runs out. That's exactly what he wants. A man like Price has never once won a fair fight in his life. He only wins by making people afraid of each other instead of him. But even as Jack said it, his eyes had already found the man, the heavy-set one, the one who'd texted his deputy brother-in-law. He'd gone very still in his chair, and he was sweating, and he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Jack walked over to him slowly. The whole diner watched. It's you, isn't it? Jack said quietly. Not cruel, almost gentle. Not the brother-in-law. That part was real an accident. But after when Doyle left, when you saw which way this was going, somebody called you. Or you called them, and they offered you something to make your problem go away. Jack crouched down to the man's level. How much do you owe him? The man's face collapsed. 11,000, he whispered. My wife's chemo. He said if I just told him what was happening in here, who had the phone, who was talking, he'd wipe it. The whole 11,000 gone. Tears ran down the heavy man's face. She's got 2 rounds left. I'm not a bad man. She's got 2 rounds left. The diner held its breath, waiting to see what the old biker would do to the man who'd sold them all out. And Jack Sullivan reached out and put his hand on the man's shaking shoulder. What's your name? Jack said gently. Frank. The man wept. Frank Mercer. Frank. Jack's voice was steady and kind. You and Ethan are the same man. You know that same trap, same monster, same impossible choice, your own soul, or the life of somebody you'd die for. He found the thing you love most, and he used it as a leash, exactly like he did to those 2 boys, exactly like he's done to half this county. Jack squeezed his shoulder. I'm not angry at you, Frank. I'm angry at the man who built a machine that turns good husbands into informants by holding their dying wives hostage. That's who we're taking down tonight, not you. Frank Mercer broke completely sobbing into his own hands, and the waitress, The same one who'd been ready to accuse him a minute before crossed the room and put her arms around him. Jack stood and faced the room and faced the camera, and the number in the corner read 11,000 now and would not stop climbing. "You hear that, whoever's still listening," Jack said to the Lenzoads. "That's what this man does. That's the whole business. He finds the people who love the hardest, the fathers, the husbands, the daughters, and he turns their love into a chain. And then he sits in the dark counting his money while they tear themselves apart." Jack's voice dropped low and certain, and absolutely unafraid. "Well, the lights are on now, Nolan, all of them, and there's nowhere left in this whole county for you to hide." Out on the dark highway, a new set of headlights had appeared, but these were coming slow and steady, and as they pulled into the lot, the people nearest the window could see it was a plain sedan, and the man stepping out of it wore a rumpled suit and carried a battered leather briefcase, and he was already half running toward the door. Carl Whitman had arrived. The door banged open, and Carl Whitman came through it, breathing hard, tie-loose briefcase swinging, and he stopped dead 3 steps inward when he saw the cluster of people. The phone still held high, the red dot blinking the number in the corner that now read 14,000. "Lord above," he said, "it's worse than the live stream looked." "It's better than the live stream looked," Jack said. "Come here, Carl. Meet the men who just handed you the case of your life." Carl Whitman was 60 years old, silver-haired, with the rumpled look of a man who'd given up on impressing anyone decades ago and had instead spent that energy becoming very, very good at one thing. He set his briefcase on the booth table, snapped it open, and his sharp eyes went immediately to Ethan. "You're the one with the photographs." Ethan nodded mute. "Son, I need you to understand something before you say another word." Carl pulled out a legal pad and a pen, then thought better of it and set them down. "I'm not the police. I'm not the prosecutor. Anything you tell me I can protect, but the second you say it on that live feed, the whole world owns it, including the men who'll try to twist it against you in a courtroom. So from this moment, you talk to me quiet off the camera. You understand?" "He already understands," Jack said. "I cut them off 20 minutes ago. They haven't said a word about the robbery since." Carl looked up at Jack, and something passed between the two old men, a respect built over years Jack had never explained to anyone in the diner. "You did right," Carl said. Then lower just to Jack, "How bad is it out there, Price call?" "Twice. Sent a man named Doyle who I sent home. Price says he's got an account in this room who's been feeding him everything." Jack nodded toward Frank Mercer, still red-eyed in the corner, the waitress's arm still around him. That part was true. Frank there, his wife's got cancer. Price offered to clear his debt for information. Carl closed his eyes for a second. Of course he did. That's the whole model. Find the love, pull the leash. He opened them. "Is the drive secure, the security footage?" "Hector's got eyes on it. Nobody's touched it." "Good. Don't let anyone touch it until the federal people get here." Carl lowered his voice further. "And Jack, they are coming. The corruption unit. I have a name and agent. She's real, she's clean. She's been chasing stills for 2 years. But here's what I need you to brace for." He glanced around to make sure only Jack could hear. "They're at least 90 minutes out, maybe more. The nearest field office that isn't compromised is in Phoenix, and between here and Phoenix is a whole lot of dark highway that belongs to Nolan Price." Jack's jaw tightened. "So the danger isn't here anymore. It's on the road." "The danger is anyone in this room who leaves," Carl said grimly. "As long as you're all here on camera, packed together, you're safe. Price can't touch a building. The whole world is watching. But the second somebody walks out that door alone into the dark onto his highway," he didn't finish. And right on cue, as if the universe had been waiting for the worst possible moment, the waitress Donna, the one who dropped the coffee pot at the very start of the night, the one who'd held Frank Mercer while he cried, stood up and reached for her purse. "My son," she said, and her voice was shaking. "My boy's home alone. He's 9. I always call him at my break. And I can't reach him. The line's busy. It's been busy for 20 minutes, and he doesn't have anybody else." She was already moving toward the door. "I have to go. I have to get to him." "Donna," Jack's voice cracked across the room like a whip. "Stop. Do not walk out that door. That's my son. And the second you're alone on that road, you're exactly what Price needs." Jack crossed to her, put himself between her and the door, his hands up, gentle but immovable. He just told me there's an account in this room. He told me to make us doubt each other. You think it's a coincidence your boy's line went busy 20 minutes after Price found out this place went live? You think that's luck? He held her eyes. He's not trying to hurt your son, Donna. He's trying to make you run out that door into the dark so he can take the one thing he needs, a witness who left the crowd. Donna's face went white. He wouldn't a child. He held a dying woman's chemo over her husband to make him a snitch. Jack said quietly, there is no line that man won't cross. But here's the thing he doesn't understand. Jack turned back to the room, lifted the phone, found the lens again. He thinks the only way to protect your boy is for you to drive into his trap. He's wrong. There's a better way. The same way we protected Travis's mother. He looked into the camera. Anybody watching who's near? He turned to Donna. Where do you live? Brennan Street, she whispered. The blue house on Brennan in Holbrook. Cody. His name's Cody. Anybody near Brennan Street in Holbrook, Jack said to the lens. There's a 9-year-old boy named Cody, alone in the blue house, and his mama can't reach him, and she's scared. If you're good, if you're close, go knock on that door. Be a neighbor, be a witness. Stay till his mama gets home. He paused. We are going to flood this whole county with good people standing in doorways, and there is not a thing Nolan Price can do about it because you cannot threaten 1,000 witnesses at once. The comments scrolled faster than anyone could read, and then 40 seconds later, no more. Donna's phone rang in her trembling hand. She fumbled it to her ear. Cody, Cody. The whole diner watched her face, and it crumpled, but with relief, the kind of relief that buckles your knees. Baby, are you who's okay? Okay, put her on. A pause. Oh, yeah, yes, that's thank you. His phone was off the hook. He was watching cartoons. He didn't. She started to laugh and cry at the same time. A woman 2 doors down saw the live stream. She recognized the street name. She's there. She's with him right now. He's fine. He just had the phone off the hook. The diner erupted, and this time Jack let them have it because they needed it. 53 people who had watched the dark reach for a 9-year-old boy and had watched a stranger's kindness reach him first. Carl Whitman stood beside Jack watching the number climb past 20,000, and he shook his head slowly. In 30 years of law, he said quietly, I have never once seen evidence protect itself. I've watched it get burned, buried, lost, misplaced by men with badges. And you just turned a phone camera into something no fire can touch. He looked at Jack with something close to wonder. How'd you know it would work? I didn't, Jack admitted. I just knew the old way doesn't. I've watched too many good people go quiet and disappear because they did everything right and trusted the system to protect them, and the system belonged to the man they were hiding from. Jack's voice was low. The only thing Price was ever really selling was darkness, Carl. Privacy. The dark where he could do what he wanted. So I figured take that away, and what's he got left? Nothing, Carl said. He's got nothing. But Carl was wrong, and they both found out 30 seconds later. Hector came stumbling out of the back office, the night manager. His face the color of ash, and he was holding the security drive in both hands like it was a bomb. Somebody's trying to wipe it, he gasped. The system, the drive, it's networked after all. I was wrong, there's remote access. Somebody's been logged in for the last 10 minutes deleting the footage. Tonight's recording, they're erasing it right now. The diner went cold. Pull the cable, Jack barked. Whatever connects it to the world phone line internet, pull it out of the wall right now. Hector dropped to his knees behind the counter and yanked, and there was a small electric pop, and he held up a severed cable in his shaking hand. Did it work? Ethan asked. Is the footage? Hector turned the drive over, read the little screen, and his face told them before his mouth did. It's gone, he whispered. Tonight's file. The robbery. Everything that happened before we went live. Ethan putting the gun down, Travis, the confession, all of it. They deleted it. There's nothing left on the drive but the last 20 minutes after I noticed. A terrible silence fell, because everyone in that room understood at the same moment what had just been lost. The live stream had Jack confronting Doyle. Jack on the phone with Price, the rally to save Cody. But the heart of it, the thing that made the whole night make sense, the two desperate men laying down their guns, the confession about Lily, the ledger, the names spoken for the first time that had all happened before Jack thought to go live. That was on the drive. And the drive was now blank. So it's our word, Travis said hollowly. Without that footage, it's just us saying it happened. And we're two armed robbers. Who's going to believe us? Carl Whitman had gone very pale. He's right. The confession, the surrender without the recording, a good defense attorney makes all of it disappear. Reasonable doubt. He pressed his fingers to his temples. Price knew. That's why he had Doyle check the cameras. That's the first thing they always do. He didn't need to silence the witnesses if he could just erase the moment that mattered most. For the first time all night, Jack Sullivan looked beaten. He stood in the middle of the diner, and the weight of 57 hard years seemed to settle onto his shoulders all at once, and the people around him saw it, and the fear came creeping back into the room like a tide. And then Ethan Hayes began very quietly to laugh. Everyone turned to stare at him. The young man's eyes were wet, but he was laughing this broken, disbelieving, joyful laugh, and he reached into his jacket and pulled out something none of them had seen before. A small, cheap second phone, an old flip-style burner scratched and ancient. He thinks I'm an idiot, Ethan said. Price. He's always thought I was an idiot. Just a desperate dad too dumb to be dangerous. He held up the little phone. When I photographed that ledger 3 weeks ago, I didn't use my real phone. I'm not that stupid. I use this one. A throwaway I bought with cash. The pictures aren't on my main phone, Jack. They never were. The ones I sent you tonight I'd already copied over. But the originals are right here on a phone Price doesn't even know exist, that's never once been connected to anything he could reach. Carl Whitman stared at the little scratch phone like a drowning man staring at a rope. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that you have the original time-stamped, unaltered photographs of Nolan Price's ledger on a device that has never touched a network? Time and date on every shot, Ethan said. GPS tagged. Taken inside his shop. I checked 100 times because I couldn't believe I'd done it. Carl Whitman sat down hard on the edge of the booth, and he put his face in his hands, and when he looked up, he was grinning like a man 20 years younger. They erased a copy, he said. They erased the security footage, thinking it was the only record of the surrender. But the thing that buries Nolan Price was never the footage of two scared boys in a diner. It's the ledger, the names, the payments to Raymond Stills, and that, he pointed at the little flip phone, has been sitting in your pocket the entire time, original and pristine, while they burned a copy and thought they'd won. He laughed out loud. Jack, they didn't just fail, they incriminated themselves. Somebody remotely accessed and destroyed evidence tonight. That's a federal crime in itself, and it leaves a digital fingerprint, a login, and IP address. They reached out of the dark to erase the truth and left their own handprint on the wall doing it. The diner, which had been sinking back into fear a minute before, came roaring back to life. But Jack didn't celebrate. He was looking at Ethan, and his eyes were strange. Ethan, he said quietly, why'd you keep them? 8 months. Why'd you keep those photos on a burner you could have thrown in any river? You said yourself you were too scared to look at them twice. The diner quieted. Ethan looked down at the little phone in his hands. Because of Lily, he said finally. Because one day she's going to be old enough to ask why her daddy did the things he did. And I needed there to be proof I didn't just roll over, that somewhere, even when I was too scared to use it, I had the truth in my pocket. I had a way out, even if I never had the guts to take it. His voice broke. I kept it for the same reason a man keeps a photograph of somebody he lost. Not because he's going to do anything with it, because letting go of it would mean it was really over. He looked up at Jack. Tonight's the first time I ever thought maybe it wasn't over. Maybe I could actually use it. Jack reached out and closed Ethan's fingers around the little phone, both his scarred hands over the young man's. You hold on to that, Jack said. Not me, not Carl, not the FBI, not till they're standing right here and you hand it over yourself on camera with the whole world watching you do it. Because here's what your daughter's gonna know someday, Ethan. She's not going to know her daddy as a man who robbed a diner. She's going to know him as the man who carried the truth in his pocket, for 8 months when it could have gotten him killed, and then walked it straight into the light. That's the story. That's the one she'll tell her own kids. Ethan couldn't speak. He just nodded, holding the phone like it was his daughter's hand. And then Carl's own phone buzzed, and he answered, and his face changed as he listened. Yes, this is Whitman. Yes, ma'am, I'm with them now. They're all safe. We're all what? He stood up slowly. Say that again. The whole diner watched him. 20 minutes, Carl said into the phone. Understood. We'll be ready. He lowered it. He looked at Jack and then at the room, and there was something enormous in his face. That was Special Agent Rivera, the corruption unit. He swallowed. They're not 90 minutes out anymore. They scrambled a team out of Phoenix the second the live stream hit 100,000 views because they realized the whole country was now their witness. They're 20 minutes away. And she said, Carl's voice caught. She said they already have a warrant, signed an hour ago for Nolan Price's pawn shop, for the safe in the back, for the ledger. How? Travis breathed. How'd they get a warrant that fast in his own county? They didn't go through his county, Carl said, and now he was almost laughing again. They went federal. The photographs Ethan sent through Jack's phone an hour ago, Agent Rivera took them to a federal judge in Phoenix at 2 in the morning and got a signature before this live stream was even an hour old. The monthly payments to Stills were all they needed. Stills has been under federal interest for 2 years. He shook his head in disbelief. You didn't just expose Price tonight. You handed a task force that's been starving for 2 years exactly the thing they needed to move. They've been ready. They've been so ready. They just needed someone on the inside brave enough to point at the book. Everyone turned to look at Ethan Hayes, the desperate father who'd walked into a diner with a shaking gun and a few $100s worth of bad ideas, and who it turned out had been carrying the keys to a kingdom in his pocket the whole time. There's more, Carl said, and his voice dropped. Rivera told me something else. She said when they ran Price's network against their files tonight, a name came back flagged at the very top of the structure. Not Price, not even Stills. He paused. There's somebody above both of them, somebody who's been the real owner of this whole machine the entire time. And Stills, the politician, everybody thought was the top. He's just another Frank Mercer, just another man on a leash. The diner went silent. Who? Jack said. They wouldn't say, not on the phone. Carl looked at the live feed at the number now climbing past 200,000. But Rivera said something I'll never forget. She said, tell them the man they cornered tonight is the smallest fish in the pond, and he knows it, which is exactly why he's the most dangerous one in the next 20 minutes. A small fish who knows the net's coming will do anything to trade up. And as if those words had summoned it, Ethan's main phone, the one still sitting on the table, the one Price had been calling all night, lit up one final time. But it wasn't a call, it was a text. From Price. 3 words. Jack picked up the phone, turned it so the camera caught the screen, and read the 3 words aloud to 200,000 strangers. Tell them everything. For a moment, no one understood. Then Carl Whitman started to laugh low and amazed. He's flippin', he said. He knows the net's coming. He just got Rivera's same message somehow from somebody he knows. There's a man above him, and he knows the only way he survives is to be the one who hands that man to the FBI first. Carl looked up. Price isn't fighting anymore. Price is trying to become a witness. He's trying to trade up. He just told you to tell us everything because he's about to do the exact same thing, race you to the prosecutor's door and sell out the man above him to save his own skin. So it really is over, Donna said softly. For him, it's really over. It's the beginning of over, Carl said. The end takes years, but yes. He looked around the room at the 53 ordinary people who'd walked in expecting nothing more than a late meal and had instead pulled the first thread that unraveled an empire. It started here, tonight, in this room with all of you. Out on the dark highway, far off but coming fast, a long line of headlights had appeared, more than one car, more than 2. A convoy of them, steady and relentless and utterly unafraid of any county line. And the people nearest the windows began one by one to stand and to watch them come. And the clock above the diner counter, the one nobody had looked at all night, read 6:11 in the morning. The convoy of headlights swept into the lot and stopped, and doors opened all at once, and the people who came through them moved with the calm, total authority of those who answered to no county at all. The woman in front was small, sharp-eyed 50-something, and she carried herself like she'd been awake for 2 years and intended to stay awake for 2 more, if that's what it took. She stopped just inside the door, took in the room, the crowd, the phone still streaming, the 2 young men, the old biker at the center of it all, and her eyes went straight to Carl. Whitman. Agent Rivera. Carl stepped forward. They're all here. Everyone's safe. Nobody left the building. Rivera's gaze moved across the diner, and for just a moment, something cracked through her professional calm, something that looked almost like awe. 300,000 people, she said quietly. 300,000 people watched you do this. In real time. She looked at Jack. You're Sullivan. I am. I've read your file. A pause. Long file. Yes, ma'am. And tonight you turned a diner full of strangers into the most watched witness protection program in American history. She almost smiled. I don't know whether to arrest you or pin a medal on you. Plenty of folks have wanted to do both, Jack said, usually at the same time. Rivera turned to Ethan and her voice gentled, but only slightly. Mr. Hayes, I understand you have something for me. Ethan stood. His hands were steady now, steadier than they'd been all night, steadier than they'd been in 8 months. He held up the little scratched burner phone so the camera could see it, so the 300,000 could see it, and then he walked it across the room and placed it in Special Agent Rivera's open palm. 40 pages, he said, original, time-stamped. Taken inside Nolan Price's shop 3 weeks ago. Every name, every payment. I've been carrying it for 3 weeks, too scared to use it. He swallowed. I'm not scared anymore. The diner was silent as Rivera closed her fingers around the phone. Mr. Hayes, she said, do you understand what you've just done? I robbed a diner tonight, Ethan said quietly. I know what I did. I'll answer for it. You will, Rivera agreed, but you'll answer for it as the man who handed the federal government the single most important piece of evidence in a 2-year corruption investigation. And I promise you the prosecutor will know that every day, in every room. She looked at the phone in her hand, then back at him. Cooperation like this doesn't erase what you did, but it changes everything about what happens next. It was Carl who stepped in, then the lawyer's instinct kicking. Agent Rivera, before my clients say one more word, and as of right now, both of these men are my clients pro bono. Effective immediately, I want it on record, and there are 300,000 witnesses to put it on record, that Mr. Hayes and Mr. Cole surrendered voluntarily, disarmed voluntarily, and have cooperated fully and without coercion. So noted, Rivera said. And counselor, given what's on this phone, I suspect the prosecutor's office is going to be very interested in keeping these 2 men healthy, talkative, and grateful. She glanced at Travis. Witnesses who can connect the ledger to live testimony are worth more than gold in a RICO case. And that's what this is now. Federal racketeering, the whole structure. The word landed in the room like a verdict. RICO. Most of them didn't know exactly what it meant, but they understood the weight of it, that the thing they'd uncovered tonight wasn't a man. It was a machine, and the machine was about to be taken apart bolt by bolt. But Travis had gone quiet, and Jack saw it. What is it, son? Jack said. My mother, Travis said. Rivera's head turned sharply. Travis Cole's mother, the care home in Maricopa County. She was already pulling out her phone. We have a unit there. Have since 2:15 this morning, the moment your live stream named her. She's safe. She's been safe for hours. There's an agent sitting in the lobby drinking bad coffee and 3 civilians who showed up on their own because they saw the stream. She looked up. You called for help, and the whole state answered before we could even get there. Do you understand how rare that is? People don't do that. Not for strangers. Not in the middle of the night. Travis Cole sat down slowly in the booth, and he put his face in his hands, and his shoulders shook. And this time, nobody mistook it for weakness, because every soul in that room had learned tonight what it cost a man like Travis to let himself be saved. They came, he said into his hands, for my mom. Strangers came for my mom. They came because you stopped running, Jack said. Everything that's happened in this room since you set that gun down, every stranger in every doorway, every person who showed up for a woman they've never met, that started the second you decided to be a witness instead of a victim. You did that, Travis, not me. You. Rivera was moving now, her people fanning out through the diner, gathering names, taking the security drive from Hector, photographing the room, cataloging 53 witnesses, with a care that told everyone present that this would be done right, that nothing would be lost or buried or misplaced. And as her team worked, Rivera drew Carl and Jack aside, and her voice dropped. There's something you need to know before it breaks, she said. And it's going to break in the next hour on every feed in the country, so I'd rather you hear it from me. She glanced at the streaming phone, then turned her back to it so the camera couldn't read her lips. Nolan Price contacted our office 40 minutes ago. Through a lawyer, he's offering to cooperate. Full cooperation in exchange for consideration. He's flipping, Carl said. We figured. He's flipping up, Rivera said. He's offering us the man above Raymond Stills, the one who actually owns the network. She paused. And Jack, the name he gave us. You're going to want to sit down. I've been standing a long time, Jack said. Say it. Rivera said it, and Jack Sullivan, who had stared down two armed men and a cleanup crew, and the devil himself on a phone line, without so much as blinking, went absolutely white. Because the name Rivera spoke was a name Jack knew, a name from his own past, a name from the 11 years he'd spent in a federal prison, and from the long road after, from the brother who'd been squeezed out of his legitimate shop 3 years ago by 100 phantom violations, the same brother whose ruin had set Jack wondering all that time ago who was really holding the leash. Say it again, Jack whispered. Garrett Vance, Rivera repeated gently. He runs 3 counties through shell companies and proxies. Stills was his political cover. Price was his collections arm. And he's been operating in plain sight for 15 years because nobody could ever connect the layers. She studied Jack's face. You know him. He's the man who destroyed my brother, Jack said very quietly. 3 years ago, took everything Danny built, made it look like bad luck and bad paperwork. Danny had a heart attack 8 months later. Doctors called it stress. Jack's hands had curled into slow fists. I always knew somebody was behind it. I spent 3 years looking and never found a thread I could pull. He looked up at Rivera and then slowly at the 2 young men in the booth at Ethan and Travis, and something moved across his weathered face that the camera caught and 300,000 people would replay 1,000,000 times. And then 2 desperate boys walk into a diner to rob me of a few $100s. And they hand me the whole thing, the entire machine, the man at the top. His voice was thick. You came in here tonight thinking you were criminals. You walked in carrying the answer to the thing that's haunted me for 3 years, and you didn't even know you had it. Ethan stared at him. We didn't, Jack, we didn't know. I know you didn't, Jack said. That's what makes it grace, son. Nobody plans grace. It just walks in the door at 2 in the morning with shaking hands and a borrowed gun. He stood and he crossed to the booth and he pulled both young men up onto their feet, one hand on the back of each neck the way he had held Travis hours before. You hear me, both of you. Whatever a court decides you owe for tonight, you pay it standing up with your heads high. Because the same night you did the worst thing you will ever do, you also did something most men never get to do in a whole lifetime. You brought down a kingdom. You set people free who'll never know your names. Both of those things are true. A man can be both. A man is always both. The diner was crying now openly. All of them, the trucker, Donna, old Eleanor Briggs, in her walker. Even one of Rivera's hardened agents had to turn away and clear his throat. And then Rivera's phone rang, and she answered it and listened, and her whole body changed. Say again, she said. The shop. You're inside the shop right now. A pause. The safe, another pause longer. And then slowly, Special Agent Rivera smiled the first full smile anyone had seen on her face all night. Copy. Photograph everything. Don't move it. I'm on my way. She lowered the phone. That was the team at Price's pawn shop. The warrant came through clean. They opened the safe. She looked around the room. The ledger's real. The physical book. It's exactly where Mr. Hayes said it would be. 41 pages, and it matches his photographs line for line. The diner erupted, and this time even Jack let himself feel it, because there was no taking it back. Now the book existed. The book was federal evidence. The book matched the photographs, and there was no fire on earth that could undo what had been set in motion in this room. It's done, Carl Whitman said, and his voice broke on the word. Jack, it's actually done. They can't bury this. They can't lose it. It's the most documented case in the history of this state. The ledger, the photos, the live stream, 300,000 witnesses, the remote wipe leaving a federal fingerprint, Price flipping on Vance. He laughed, wiping his eyes. I've waited my whole career for a case that couldn't be made to disappear. And it walked into a diner at 2 in the morning. But there was one thing left. One thing Jack needed. He picked up the phone, the live one, the one that had carried this whole long night out to the world, and he looked into the lens one final time, and the number beside the little red dot read 400,000 now, and was still climbing. To everybody who stayed, Jack said quietly, all night, to everybody who went and knocked on a stranger's door because we asked you to the woman who sat with a 9-year-old boy named Cody, To the people who showed up at a care home for a mother they'd never met. He paused. You want to know what just happened here tonight, I'll tell you. A man named Nolan Price built his whole life on one bet that good people are too scared, too tired, too alone to ever fight back. That if he found the thing you loved most and held it hostage, you'd hand him your soul to keep it safe. He bet his entire empire on the idea that love makes people weak. Jack's voice dropped, and it filled the silent diner and it filled 400,000 rooms across the country. He was wrong. Love is the thing that walked a burner phone full of evidence through 8 months of terror. Love is the thing that made a man put his gun down in front of 50 strangers. Love is the thing that filled a county with people standing in doorways at 3 in the morning. Nolan Price never understood the one thing that beat him tonight. He thought love was a leash. Jack looked straight into the lens. It's the thing that breaks every leash there is. He set the phone down, and the diner sat in the kind of silence that only comes after something true has been said. The hours after moved fast. Rivera's team took statements. Carl sat with Ethan and Travis building the foundation of the cooperation agreement that would in the months to come keep one man out of a life sentence and turn the other into the witness who put Garrett Vance away for good. Frank Mercer gave his statement too and wept through it, and Rivera looked at the heavy-set man who'd betrayed the room out of love for a dying wife and said only, "Sir, you're a victim in this, same as the rest. Let's get your wife's name off that man's ledger forever." And Frank Mercer cried so hard the waitress had to hold him up. The sun came up over the diner at 6:14 in the morning, and Jack Sullivan stood in the lot watching the federal cars pull away one by one, and Carl came and stood beside him. "You know they're going to want you to testify," Carl said. "About Vance, about your brother? It'll drag you back through all of it. The 11 years, Danny, everything you've spent 20 years trying to put down." "I know," Jack said. "You don't have to. You weren't even a target tonight. You could walk away clean." Jack watched the last car turn onto the highway. "Danny used to say something," he'd said, "back when we were kids. He used to say the only thing evil needs to win is for the people who could stop it to decide it's not their problem." He was quiet a moment. "I decided it wasn't my problem for 3 years, Carl. I let it eat at me, and I called that grieving. Tonight, 2 strangers handed me a second chance to make it my problem." He turned to the lawyer. "I'm not walking away from that. Not this time." In the weeks that followed, the footage did what Jack had bet his life it would do. It went past 400,000, past 4 million, past 40 million, and finally past 50 million people who watched an old biker in a leather vest talk 2 desperate men down from the worst night of their lives and turn a robbery into a reckoning. They watched the surrender. They watched the rally for Cody. They watched the burner phone change hands. They watched Jack say that love breaks every leash there is. And while the world watched, the machine came apart. The FBI raided the pawn shop and recovered the physical ledger, all 41 pages, every name and every payment, matching Ethan's photographs to the line. Raymond Stills III was arrested on a Tuesday morning, leaving the county building, and the cameras caught his face. And it was not the face of a powerful man. It was the face of a man who'd been someone's puppet so long, he'd forgotten he had strings. Nolan Price, racing to trade up, gave the federal government 3 years of records in a direct line to Garrett Vance. And in exchange, he got a cell instead of a grave, which was more mercy than he'd ever shown a single soul on his ledger. And Garrett Vance, the man who'd ruined Danny Sullivan, the man at the top of a kingdom built on other people's love. Garrett Vance was arrested at his lake house at dawn. 15 years of hidden crimes finally connected layer by layer. And when they walked him out in handcuffs, a reporter shouted a question about the diner, about the live stream, about the old biker who'd started it all. And Garrett Vance, who had spent 15 years invisible, said the only words he'd ever say in public about that night: "I don't know any biker." But the whole country knew. 50 million people knew exactly who Jack Sullivan was. The dozens of names in that ledger, the Margaret Ellisons, who'd lost their houses, the Frank Mercers, who'd been bled for a dying wife's medicine, the families who'd thought their ruin was just bad luck, they were freed. The illegal debts built on compounding interest no court would ever uphold were voided one after another as the case unwound. People who'd been drowning for years in the dark suddenly found, because of one night in one diner, that the water was gone. Ethan Hayes stood before a federal judge 8 months later, and the prosecutor, exactly as Rivera had promised, told the court at length and on the record what this man had done with the truth he'd carried in his pocket. The judge handed down a sentence that accounted for the robbery honestly and for the cooperation fully, and Ethan served his time and his wife Jess brought Lily to visit, and Lily, whose repaired heart beat strong and steady, now learned to walk in a prison visiting room holding her daddy's 2 fingers. Travis Cole became the cornerstone witness in the case against Garrett Vance, and his testimony, calm and clear and unshakable, helped put the man away for the rest of his natural life. His mother lived out her days in safety, and Travis sat with her every Sunday, and he never ran from anything again. And Jack Sullivan, he testified. He went back through all of it, the 11 years the brother he'd lost, the whole long dark road. And he laid it out in a courtroom for the people who needed to hear it, and when it was over, he walked out into the sun, a free man with nothing left to put down. People asked him after why he did it. Why an old outlaw with every reason to stay in his corner booth and mind his own coffee had decided on one ordinary night to take apart an empire instead. Reporters asked, strangers asked, the 50 million who'd watched the footage asked, and Jack Sullivan always gave them the same answer, the one he'd given the camera before the sun came up, the one that 50 million people had already heard him say. He'd say that Nolan Price built a kingdom on a lie, the lie that love makes people weak, that fear is stronger than loyalty, that good men are too tired and too scared and too alone to ever stand up. And he'd say that 2 desperate strangers walked into a diner one night and proved that lie wrong forever in front of the whole world with shaking hands and a borrowed gun and a truth they'd been too frightened to use until a stranger in a leather vest told them they were worth saving. The diner that night didn't just survive a robbery. It became the place where an entire kingdom of fear was brought into the light and torn down to nothing. One confession, one stranger, one act of stubborn love at a time. And every soul who was in that room and every one of the 50 million who watched learned the same thing Jack Sullivan had spent his whole hard life learning and had finally that night gotten to prove. A leash only holds a man who has forgotten he can break it. And no kingdom built on fear has ever once survived the moment its people stopped being afraid.